The first lesson we're going to cover is micro-decision making. It's going to be one of many little lessons like this that covers this subject matter, but in this scenario, we're going to cover a small, minor decision that you make in the early game and how it affects the late game, and how that can skew your outlook of how the game went. Okay, let's set up the scenario here. Player A has Chipmunk Hunk, Black Tarantula, Witch, Colleen Wing, Carnage Minion, Daredevil, and player B has Shocker, Whiplash, Betty Brant, Reporter, and Elijah. Player A has decided that he's gonna lock up the range attack from Shocker on the left by bringing over Carnage Minion and Daredevil. And he's setting up an attack for the next turn with Black Tarantula's running shot, with help from Witch's enhancement. But here he has a decision to make with Chipmunk Hunk. Chipmunk Hunk has an ability where he can use Leap Climb and then use Quake afterwards. So he has a choice to go after either the Shocker on the bottom left or Shocker and Betty Brant and Whiplash. He needs an 8 to hit everybody, or he needs a 6 to hit Betty Brant and get her off of the map, score those 15 points, and basically knock out a Perplex. The choice here is whether or not you want to go hit the easier 6 or the harder 8. Because if he goes after Shocker, it's going to be an 8. Whereas if he goes for the group on the right, it's a 6 or an 8. You might think, well, it's a no-brainer, I should just go for the 6. However, if he hits that 8 on Shocker, he basically takes away his opponent's next turn. Because in the scenario where he goes after Shocker on the left side, the other Shocker will not have enough movement to attack anyone of significance, because he'll have to go after Chipmunk Hunk or Carnage Minion. Those aren't really good propositions, and then the counterattack from Black Tarantula the next turn could spell doom. But if he goes after Betty Brant and does and let's say he misses and just still hits Betty Brant, she's gone, but then the main attackers of both Shockers are still in play. So the higher risk, higher reward is to go after the Shocker on the left side, because he could basically take away an attacker or two. Whereas if he goes on the other side, he still leaves all the attackers, because Betty Brant will be the only one that was knocked out. So let's look at what happens in this game. Player A decides to go for the bigger play, the bigger reward, by going after Shocker and Elijah on the left side. He ends up rolling a 7, misses. If you look at the next slide, if that same attack hit, where he rolls even just a 6, Betty Brant is knocked out. You score 15 points, you get rid of a Perplexer, and you still lock up Whiplash and Shocker, because they have to break away from Chipmunk Hunk. And if you do lose Chipmunk Hunk, he's 20 points, Betty Brant is 15 points. But in this game, not all points are created equal, because Betty Brant's Perplex is so much more useful on player B's team than Chipmunk Hunk is on player A's team. Betty Brant's Perplex is the only real support power if you look at team. So by taking that out, they're all going to be stuck at a 10 attack, which makes it harder to hit. But having an 11 attack makes it that much easier to hit those 17s and 18s. Now let's look at the consequences for that move. Betty Brant still has her Perplex. Player B decides to Perplex Shocker's attack to 11, the one on the left, and tries to attack that Carnage Minion to go for the one-hit KO. 11 on 18 through shape change isn't that bad. He rolls a 7, knocks out Carnage Minion. Now, in the previous scenario where Chipmunk Hunk goes after Betty Brant, if Betty Brant isn't there, that Shocker will have a harder time to hit that Carnage Minion. Player B might not make that attack. In fact, they might try to break away with Whiplash to try to shoot Carnage Minion, and then Shocker on the right side has to attack Chipmunk Hunk over there. So the entire game's dynamic can shift because the Perplex is not there. Because let's face it, 10 on 18s and 10 on 19s is much harder than 11 on 18s, 11 19s. That's just math, right? You guys should know that. Needing a 6 gives you a 72.2% chance of hitting. Needing a 7 gives you a 58% chance. Needing an 8 gives you a 41.6% chance. So you can see, for the most part, you want to get 6s and 7s in a typical game. So if you can make it where they need 8s and 9s, psychologically your opponent might not even make that attack, or might overcompensate because it's so hard to hit, right? And because of all that, they can make a mistake to further exacerbate the problem. Let's look at it even further. As the game progresses, you can see right here that Whiplash and Shocker are now free to do what they need to do on the right side So Whiplash comes over, hits Chipmunk Hunk, Carnage Minion's gone, a couple lucky rolls, Daredevil's gone. By the time Black Tarantula is able to get into combat, he's basically outnumbered. With Colleen Wing not having charge, it takes her a while to get into combat because she has to just walk up to them and they can still break away and move away. Well, what happens at the end of the game here is Black Tarantula needs to roll a 5 to basically win the game. He rolls a 4 and then player A says, "Was that my fault that I missed a 5?" Like Darth Maul says, every choice you have made has brought you to this moment. Because everything that you've done before has led you to this moment where you needed a 5 to hit. It could have been avoided had you just got rid of the Betty Brant. Maybe it might end up the same, but because Betty Brant had the Perplex for the entire game, player B was able to hit multiple times because of that attack getting higher. And on defense, perplexing defense higher so that, they miss. So the lesson here is you cannot look at one attack, one decision you made at the very end of the game as the end all be all. You have to look at decisions you have made prior. And in this scenario, I pointed to turn 2 where Chipmunk Hunk had the opportunity to knock out Betty Brant and get rid of the Perplex. That was the turning point in my opinion because I watched the entire game and the perplexing from Betty Brant was just enough to hit the attacks and just to make him miss. So that's a valuable lesson that people should learn when looking at dice rolls and your attacks that may or may not break the game. Because it's not all about that roll. It's about what you did to get to that point where you needed that roll. Maybe you do something else where you don't even get that attack and maybe you just wipe his team because he can't hit you anymore because there's no more perplexes. In that case, we're not even having this discussion, right? Keep in mind that I'm not saying that the same thing might not happen, could not happen. It very well might, but you need to change the way you look at the game and not look at it strictly as dice hitting or missing. You have to look at it on a much deeper level, and that can definitely take your game to the next level. Hope you guys enjoyed this first episode. There will be more coming regarding topics like this, and let me know what you guys think. And now I have a new saying: only bad players blame the dice. See you guys.